Did you enjoy your lunch? We are here at the Global HR Forum 2021 Track B afternoon session. Let us begin. So I do understand that it's right after lunch and you might feel a bit drowsy, but please try to concentrate. We do have an interesting topic, which is on reality learned through virtuality Metaverse. Nowadays, Metaverse is garnering a lot of attention, and you don't need the general concepts that you apply for education, such as place, space, tools, or learners. Within a virtual space, you utilize virtual tools, and the virtual me receives education. But Metaverse is not just a simple VR. You can advance yourself in this virtual space. So nowadays, we are utilizing more online education during such a time. Metaverse is garnering more attention and popularity. We have three speakers today. First of all, Mr. Yongho, CEO of Galaxy Corporation, Yu Chao-ho, CEO of Mamo 6, and also Choi Yongho, CEO of Galaxy Corporation, and Chun Woo-yeol, CEO of Venta VR. The moderator is Professor Kim Sangkyun at the Department of Industrial Engineering of Kangwon National University. Please greet them with a big hand. Now, Professor, please go ahead.
안녕하세요. 반갑습니다.
Good afternoon. As was just introduced, I am Kim Sang-gyun. I am a cognition scientist. So thank you very much for that double round of applause. I thought that we wouldn't have many on-site participants, but I see that we have a full room, so it's more encouraging. But I think what's more important are the three panelists, the speakers that we have in this session. So rather than talk about the research results, we would be better to listen to what's actually happening in the field. And so this is how we will proceed today. So we will be listening to the presentations by each speaker for about 20 minutes each, and then the remaining 30 minutes will be used for addressing the questions that you send to our Eventus platform. So when you send your questions, please, if you are designating the speaker to whom you're addressing the question, please do so. But if it's a common question for all, please designate that. The next speaker is from Mamo 6, CEO Yu Choro. Good afternoon. I am the CEO of Mamo 6. My name is Yu Chol-ho. Thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me to this important event. And today, what I'll be talking about is learning about reality in the virtual world. So I'd like to talk about the projects that we have implemented on field at Mamo 6 and the lessons that we have learned so far. So I will begin my presentation. I'd like to begin with an introduction of Mamo 6 and talk about education before COVID and during COVID and the post-COVID era metaverse education that we are envisioning. So I will begin with an introduction of our company. We were established in 2015 as a startup. We are a company in Daegu. We have about 20 developers, and I've been in the gaming business for about 16 years. And then I worked for a small entertainment company, Grigon Entertainment Company. I was in charge of a project at Nexon, and right now I have established and I am managing Mamo 6. You will see the developments of our company activities. So we were able to collaborate with many important companies and projects. And recently, with LG U Plus and Shinhan Bank, we have developed a snow bus, which is the metaverse for Sungmyeong Women's University. So we had about 3,000 students come participate in this closed beta test festival, which went on for 3 days. We have three major business areas. First is for global audience. So we have a social metaverse service. We call this a social Metaverse, social VR, excuse me. And in education, we've had various projects such as the Metaverse campus, which I just introduced to you. So we've allowed students to enjoy these kinds of services. Last but not least, with different companies, institutions, we are collaborating to create new values through partnerships. Our company has been well known through this brand, the Galaxity. This is our first global project, and it is being serviced as a Galaxity beta service, and we are servicing in 120 countries around the world. And since 2018, and there's gaming, experience, education, and various contents lineup, and we've had about uh, thousands and millions of people, excuse me, 35,000 participants that we've had so far. And we have the XR Metaverse project with Galaxy Korea. We are establishing various tourist destinations around the world, and we are still preparing to launch. I believe the soft launching will come in November of this year. Next, I'd like to talk about the attempts that we have made in the field of education. So before COVID in 2019, briefly, we had an experience type um, education program using VR in Jamsil, Suwon, and Jecheon. We connected with children's libraries there. We were connected virtually for book review sessions. So it was a pilot project that we had conducted. And the students and the teachers who participated in this project were saying that they always had to do book reviews only with the people immediately around them, but through virtual VR projects, they were able to meet a lot of different people, even those living far away. But at that time, the VR market had not taken off in earnest. And so the penetration rate was very low, and the machine performance results were quite poor, and so it was difficult for us to continue with this business. So as you can see here on the screen, there's a facilitator who creates the room, and so he would open up the book, and there's voice chatting used to read the books. So this is the kind of the project that we had conducted in 2019. And then in 2020, we had the onset of the COVID pandemic. And since then, we couldn't go to school, we couldn't gather together. And so contactless education begun from this time. And Mammo 6 also, we heard a lot from people around us that we needed to use our existing book reading functionality to offer Galaxy School services. So this is, as you can see in the video, we used to do just the VRs, but in the case of Galaxy School, we have VR aspect. We have the PC version also mobile capable. So this is a cross-platform service. And I will be explaining further later on, but if you're doing something in virtual world, I mean, you may think that there's nothing special compared to the existing solutions. And well, in a way, it may be true. But I think these are unique aspects. So you can have the 3D models blown up right in front of you, and you can go around and rotate it. And we are not receiving any business request for this model. We attempted school solution also in Gyeongnam Bank at their HRD center. We use this, but the policy changed from this month. So we are now in the with COVID era. So the contactless solutions will be used mostly as alternate solutions during the COVID lockdowns. But of course, even if the UX are well suited to the users compared to Zoom or YouTube or other more mass uh, widely used technologies, I think there are still limitations. So, for example, I showed you the puppy, the 3D puppy that's blown up right in front of you, but these are not all VR machines. So, if you just look at it on a flat screen, they're not very functional or not very effective tools. So, in the post COVID era, how can metaverse be utilized in the field of education? So, we have the Galaxy T Beta, which we use to offer some services for fire, aviation, safety, earthquakes, and ship safety. We did offer some experience based safety education. Contents for these emergency responses. For the elementary school students, we looked at how they responded. And in fact, 87% of our users said that they played this game, and there was about 3.3 times on average repeat play of these popular content. So we have different types: experience type, gaming, and others. And so this was a bit popular among the services that we offered. So you can have both fun and education. You can catch two birds with one stone in this case. So for the Galaxy Beta, we began in 2018, and at that time, you will see this is the initial version of VR. So the VR, you would have to use it on your smartphones, and there was a bit of a mix for the different machines. So on the mobile machine, there will be 2 rounds of rendering. That was our optimization goal. So that's why you will see that the graphic style is, it's okay to see it by VR, but on flat screen, it's rather uh, not very advanced. And so for example, you can see what to do during emergencies in a plane. Also the same for ships. So you can go inside and play the game with your friends. And in fact, you rarely get opportunities to have real live experiences of receiving these trainings on ships, right? So that's a good opportunity. This is for fire emergencies. In Kidzania and other places, yes, the children do have chances to experience it indirectly, but anyhow, it's not widely available. So I think these kinds of games, these services can be quite useful. So now it's time for my conclusion. Metaverse in the field of education. I think the conclusion that we can derive at this point is, again, Mamo6 has been preparing for these services even before COVID. And so we have attempted various ways of applying metaverse in education. So previously, there was mostly indirect experience through books or videos, but metaverse now allows us to have direct experience in virtual world. And I think that is going to contribute to increasing efficiency and efficacy in the field of education. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, CEO Yu Chul-ho, for the presentation. You talked about your project with the Sookmyung Women's University, and it was just a brief explanation, but I think a lot of detail and effort had gone into to make that project a success. As for the details, we can address those later on during the Q&A session.
Let's go on to the third presentation from Bento VR. Mr. Chun Woo-yeol will give a presentation. Yes, good afternoon. I am Chun Woo-yeol, CEO of Venta VR. I'm going to talk about Metaverse for history education. Let me briefly introduce to you my company. Venta VR, as it was mentioned by Mr. Che, we actually have a sort of alternative character for history education. So Venta VR is a 3D virtual reality content production and live streaming service company which makes killer content in the era of Metaverse. The history education Metaverse actually was a sub-project, but it became really popular, and here we are today. So in 2015, the company was established. We started off with VR and AR contents. We have about 2,000 contents that we have showcased. We are probably one of the companies that have showcased globally the greatest amount of relevant contents. And starting from the early period, we have studied about Metaverse and launched projects. And what really touched my heart was that Metaverse equals love. Metaverse and love. But I like the songs of Lee Sang, and he said that I didn't know women that I knew women, but I didn't know love. But as I waited for you to catch up, I started to walk slowly, and that's how love started. And I kind of thought that the beginning of Metaverse was like that. There are probably those who are starting to engage or start a relationship with Metaverse. There are some people who might already have a relationship with Metaverse, like a love-based relationship. But anyhow, the teenagers who enjoy Metaverse are already in a relationship with Metaverse. There could be people like me who has a relationship with Metaverse because of the work that I do. But then the other people, you probably don't really know what Metaverse is right now. And you're trying to get to know Metaverse. Like you try to get to know one another before you start a relationship. It's just like love. You can easily fall into love, but most people actually take the time to get to know one another and then build a relationship. So I think that we are now in the initial stages of Metaverse. You're getting to know what Metaverse is. You don't really know what will happen with Metaverse. I think that we're in that kind of a stage. And while we carry out the projects, our staff, they continue to say, will this work? Will Metaverse work? They have that question on their mind, but love is a good thing. Metaverse is a good thing. So I think that you should have confidence and continue to take interest in Metaverse. So let's look at some of the definitions. What is Metaverse? Metaverse is a successor of mobile internet. Most people think this way. In general, when I come to these seminars, I talk about Novolux and webpage and I compare the two. But today I'm talking about education related metaverse. So let's take a look at this. This is Google Meet. It is a video conferencing solution. And as it was mentioned before, because we have online courses and online education services, you have the slide decks up here or the images up here. For example, this is the Seokguram, or you can explain about the Pulguksa, the temple in Gyeongju. Or you might want to play a YouTube video, which provides information and knowledge about these temples in Gyeongju. And that's how you deliver the knowledge. That was what happened in general. But as the world of metaverse opens up, what we will experience is something like this. This is a Gyeongju related history education content that we carried out with U+. It shows the temples, the Buddhist temples in Gyeongju. And so the metaverse of Pulguksa, the temple, was established. And here the students and the teachers would log in. This targeted students in second to fourth grade of elementary school, and the parents also participated. So they engaged in an OX quiz game, and they would actually look at the pagodas and solve problems about what happened to this pagoda, or they would look at the video about these historical relics. And after receiving a class education on Sokuram, they would actually go into the inside of Sokuram. And what's interesting here is that there is an arch structure here in the Sokuram, and that was very interesting to see in this environment. And going into the future, I think that we'll slowly see a change in the way that we approach education. There are many different metaverse platforms. I'm sure that you've heard of these before. There's a Peto, Ifland, for example, an event. Well, there's Gather Town for the live events, for example, but and then Roblox. People think that the capacity should be at least 1,000, but right now it's not that big. Zepeto 16, Ifland 31 plus 100, Roblox 50. But you can think of it as having a lot of different rooms and people can share the experience. I'm sure that one day the room capacity will greatly expand, but at this moment, what you see on the screen is a level of the room capacity, how much people a room can accommodate. And what about Venter VR? What can we do best? That's what I thought about. Can I launch a platform like Zepeto, and can we succeed? Because we wanted to start a alternative character project. We could not, and we had a limited budget. We decided to focus on what we were really good at. And so what we did was we had the experience of VR, AR projects, and we did a lot of video shooting. So we wanted to actually utilize the existing modelings that we had done. And so we wanted to use realistic capturing of 3D models, and then in terms of the metaverse teaching techniques, we could see that there was a pedagogy that can be utilized on Zoom. And then there is a pedagogy that's appropriate for offline education. And then the pedagogy that's appropriate for metaverse. So we're continuously upgrading the teaching techniques and pedagogy that is appropriate for a metaverse. And downloading the app is important, but it's really difficult to induce the people to actually download. So what we're trying to do is to have people enter the Ventaverse offerings through the web without having to download an app. Let's go into the details. What we do is we utilize XR Metaverse and we provide virtual education experience along with travel content. And so we have launched a relevant service titled Do. We will be actually officially launching this in mid-November, and 10 of the historical relics of the Shilla dynasty has been scanned, and we have created the curriculum for this. This is the first type of project that we've launched in the field of education, so we have experienced a number of challenges. But why should the virtual field trips take place in the XR metaverse? We thought about what would be effective for a metaverse when we provide the services. So we conducted a research, we did a study. When pandemic ends, we asked what people would like to do, and the number one answer was travel. This is because during COVID-19, people could not go on a trip. And we saw that many people were enjoying online trips. For example, I had the chance to see a online content about a guided tour to Spain, and that was quite interesting. And also, I saw a video by a service provider who shows the streets of New York, and it gives the feeling that you're driving a car while you're listening to the radio. The online travel contents are for watching the scenery, for example, and you can just use imagery for this. But because of COVID-19, field trips came to a full stop. They were suspended. The students who go on field trips they are able to experience more than simple imagery. And we thought that aside from the videos that's already out there, we can provide a better experience utilizing Metaverse as if the students are going on an actual field trip. And so that's why we launched this XR Metaverse based contents. So as you can see, when you're playing games, you have to move around and experience the game. And also, for realistic, there has to be interaction. And we realized that the field trips are something that requires interaction. And so we thought that the metaverse would be right for providing that field trip like experience. So we scanned what you just saw. It's not CG, we've scanned the actual historical relics to obtain a synchronization level of it says 100%, but it's almost 95, 96%, not exactly 100%. And so we did the actual scanning by visiting the site. We used drones for the scanning and we created a metaverse and we actually applied the education contents here. So this screen is showing you the process. We've utilized the photo plus LiDAR scanning and the data that has been scanned, very heavy. So there are these scanned data of cultural relics held by the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism. But in order to utilize this for a metaverse, you have to make it lighter. So we had to optimize the data so that it is fit for metaverse. So what we did was we decided to go to the site and scan the images, capture the images, and create a content that is appropriate for metaverse to make it light. Because you have to be able to access this through mobile, KakaoTalk, for example. It should not just be PC that you use for access. You can use VR headsets, for example. And let me show you a video of a metaverse that we've created. This is Sakura, and the students and the teachers gather together and basically they look at the 2D images and the videos to obtain information about Sakura. So this zone is about knowledge acquisition here about Sakura. This is the education zone. And then this is a zone that targets students. And so there are different missions that you can find in this zone. You are supposed to go find the person who made Sakura. That's one of the missions. So here's that person. And this person gives you a tip. And the graphics of the exterior, we used graphics to relive the exterior. We also wanted to have a zone that shows the actual site. So if you go into here, you can see the live imagery. This utilizes 360 video. So the exteriors are created using graphics, but the indoors were made through our scanning techniques. And if we go inside, in between, this is the interior, the inside, and we could not scan the actual inside of the Sakuran. But if you go to the Lotte World Mall, there is a folk museum which portrays the indoors of Sakuran. So we scanned that. And in between, you will find quizzes. And if you get the right answer, then you are compensated. This is an experience for individuals, but as I showed you in the other video, you can participate later on as groups. And there's greater reality compared to the Sokuran video that I showed you before. So you can freely roam about and navigate the Sokguram space. And also, you might want to give out homework to take a photo of Sokguram. And what were some of the challenges, you may ask? This is a promotional video. Why don't, uh, the challenges that we faced was that the teachers have to get accustomed to Metaverse, and they have to really study the pedagogy and the teaching techniques that are appropriate for a Metaverse. But at this moment, there's not a lot of experience among the teachers, so we actually have to find the students, we have to contact and find the teachers to ensure that this is widely utilized. And our company actually is not that large in size, so there was a lot of work that had to be done with the limited resources. This is 천마총, and once again Sakuram that I showed you. And this will be launched in December through What Is. We ask for your heated interest and attention. And we can accommodate 30 people at one time. If there is simultaneous access by 30 people, then it's okay. But we were really concerned about the optimization issue in terms of the number of concurrent users. If it's the ordinary household, then the PC capacity actually would not be that good. So we were really conscious about the optimization. Of course, we could improve the quality of the contents, but considering the PC capacity at the household level, we actually try to optimize. I'm not sure about the response from the education sector at this moment, but we do provide a lot of educational contents. For example, Pekje, that's a cultural relic here that you see from that period. And the people in the culture field actually are giving us positive feedback. We do hope that this, what we created, is widely utilized in the education sector. About 90 students participated in the experiment of this on 3 occasions, and the role of the parents are very important. Before the education took place, the parents were a bit concerned about the XR metaverse contents. So we did a survey before and after they participated in the metaverse education experience. After they completed the program and they experienced the metaverse program, they became very positive about education utilizing metaverse. And we found that the students, there were those who had visited Gyeongju and those who had not. Those who had visited liked this program because it recalled them of their time at Gyeongju. And those who had not visited Gyeongju said that they really want to go see the historical relics in Gyeongju in person. And the students said that they liked Sokuram the most because they were able to go inside the Sokuram, which is currently off limits. So it's an experience that they cannot gain in reality. It's like a fantasy experience that you can experience. And that was noted by the students as one of the most positive experiences of this program. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. We just heard from CEO Chun Woo-yeol, and what he said was that as he was explaining about Cheonmachong, the ancient tomb, that when he was providing the contents, he realized that the teachers know how to teach with these contents, because we cannot come up with the pedagogy. We can provide the teachers with the tools, but the teachers in the scene, they have to apply their pedagogy, their teaching techniques, and their teaching philosophy. We're not trying to replace anyone. We just want to provide a tool for them to use. We have a number of questions.
The next question is for Mr. Yu Chol-ho. This was a question that I had in mind as well. You talked about the Sumyoung Women's University Metaverse Festival and the students and the teachers who participate in that festival. What was their response? Did you conduct any survey? What were some of the feedback that you received from them? We are a startup company, so in May of this year from Neptune, we became a subsidiary of Neptune. So when I was in college, when I first heard about Metaverse, uh, well, I had said that that's not the type of development that we will be doing, and so we wanted that something that will be sustainable, a sustainable model. So we did not want this to end with a single festival. That's what we had discussed with the university. What was good for this project was that, well, if we cooperate with other agencies, sometimes we may be treated like any supplier. However, in the case of the Sungmyeong University project, the student bodies gave us a lot of feedback about what they were expecting, what they wanted to do. And so we had a lot of interaction about what was possible and what was not possible. And in the campus, each of the buildings there had stray cats living there. And so they wanted to include the cats in the metaverse. And so the campus metaverse project. We're going to begin with Sungmyeong University, and then we're going to expand it further to other universities, also other different types of activities and events of colleges. And so that is what we did for that project. I think it was a process of voluntary, active participation by the students that made the project more worthwhile. And the Women's University, they wanted to limit the access to just the students of the college. And for accreditation, we use the email um, of the university, and the application was actually exploding. So it was very well received. So for us also, if we get positive feedback, positive response from the students, uh, college students, I mean, it encourages us to do the next project. So if there's anyone interested in these kinds of projects to be conducted in your respective agencies or universities, please be sure to include a lot of the ideas from the students themselves. So I think you've shared with us a high level of satisfaction. But honestly, there were some area for improvement. When we say festivals for universities, I mean, although it's in Metaverse, it's still a school festival, so it would have been more better if it was open to other participants, other public, because I wanted to be joined there as well. So the next question is about accomplishment in the field of education. It goes to Chun Uyol.
에서도 간단하게 언급하셨.
And I think you briefly touched upon this already. Said that there was 90% distrust, but after experiencing the program, 70% supported metaverse education contents. But what about the feedback or the response of those who utilize metaverse for educational purposes? This year, we was part of a contest for the Metaverse contest. We took part and we actually won a prize. This was hosted by the KCA. YouTube and university professors joined together to provide lessons utilizing metaverse. The YouTubers would explain about whales, for example, and there were different events with universities. Metaverse would be used for lessons instead of YouTube or Zoom. And what was interesting was that the YouTubers, in terms of IP, they have a lot of extensive experience in programming, so they really quickly, easily adapted to Metaverse. Also, Mr. Yu talked about the 3D object being used for showing dinosaurs or whales, and people can experience these animals or beings through Metaverse. But those who are not accustomed to IPs, especially Metaverse, the YouTubers, as it was mentioned before, the experience might not be as good as the education experience using Zoom if you're not well accustomed to Metaverse, because there are some lessons and educational contents that can be specialized for Metaverse. A good example is a foreign case, and this is a retired man. In VR, he provides English lessons. I understand that he has about 100 classes that he gave within VR. Everyone would gain access to the VR, and let's say that they're in a cafe, and the VR setting is the cafe, and people would practice ordering coffee, and the effectiveness of the education experience goes up. Metaverse can be used to effectively teach certain topics. I think that's important to find the right topic or area for utilizing Metaverse in education. Okay, so he just said that there can be some pedagogy that can be specialized for a Metaverse to make Metaverse more effective. Next is a very difficult question, and it applies to all three of you.
우리가 어떤
So we have created a metaverse. We talked about the what so far, and this question from the audience is why? Why do we need to do these things? So for each company, there must be a reason why you are in the metaverse business. So I would like to talk about that. This question, let me explain that further since I am working in the field of cognition science. So in the online virtual lectures, there's the pain point is that there's a lack of communication. So in the metaverse, how can we address this issue of lack of communication? Of course, people mostly prefer to meet face to face, and that guarantees communication. But then there are also reverse or other situations when you have to meet the CEO of your company, for example. It's just a very uncomfortable situation and it doesn't facilitate communication. But anyhow, generally speaking, rather than being on the field or on site, if you are in metaverse, it hinders communication. And there is the linguistic message as well as non-linguistic messages that are important also, the tone or the gestures that you take, the facial expressions and the movement, body movement. So you are able to communicate through all of these different elements of physical communication. But when you're in metaverse, when you're online, oftentimes you can't see the other person. There is non-linguistic message that is delivered. So there's avatars used in Roblox and Zepeto. You do chatting. So yes, you do see the avatar, but avatars don't have any facial expressions. There's just body movement. And there's also chatting function that's used. So there's no tone, there's no intonation. So what the users say is that during chatting, they tend to speak very strongly because there's no intonation function that is possible there. So you can't really understand what the other person is feeling when that person is talking through the chat window. So there's a smile and this semicolon icon that you often use. And I often use this when I communicate with my peers also. So, but then my daughter told me, if you use that icon not, if you don't use it well, that may be misunderstood by the other person, and that can create a lot of problems. That's what was pointed out by my college student, a college daughter. So I think those kinds of problems can happen in Metaverse because of poor communication. So there's still a lot of elements that are missing. I think in the future we have to focus on making sure that these missing elements are filled eventually. So now let's go on to another difficult question. I think this question is rather long. Recently, the management of companies, without having deep understanding about metaverse, are saying that we have to do it because other companies are doing it. So they would instruct the other people in the company, other employees, to do metaverse in education in certain fields without deep understanding. So the question is, of course, there's uncertainty with regards to what and how, but then before that, we have to think about the why of a metaverse. So for companies, particularly, many companies should be interested in metaverse, but what is the reasoning behind? What is the why behind the need to have metaverse in the field of education? So since Mr. Chun talked mostly about the metaverse in education, could you answer this?
같고요. 저희도
I think that's an excellent question. Now, of course, we are creating the education contents utilizing Metaverse and promoting Metaverse, but we can see that there's a lot of B2B projects by companies. And what you just mentioned, I think that there are a lot of those types of projects. The companies, since they see their competitors doing it, they want to do it as well. And basically, when we operate those types of projects, we can see that the contents, the events are very important. And the reason that we launched the Doodoo service is, I mentioned this during my presentation, but we wanted to make sure that the kids can have that field trip experience. Of course, the kids can go in person to Gyeongju, that is true. But within a short period of time, the kids can experience that relic within Metaverse. And there's a lot of lost historical and cultural relics. A particular one does not come to mind, but for example, the ninth floor pagoda, Hwangyongsaji Pagoda, has been lost. Of course, if we restore it utilizing metaverse, then within the metaverse space, you can provide education on that pagoda. And like the professor said, this can be utilized as a teaching assistant tool. So I think that at this moment, the metaverse programs can be utilized to support education. That's the direction of our production of metaverse programs. Mr. Yu also, there's a question of why.
지금 Y에 대해서
So why for Mamo 6? What was your reasoning? We developed an educational platform. Since we're in VR and in social, so why don't we do that? But of course, there were a lot of skepticism along the way. What's the difference with Metaverse versus Zoom or YouTube? That was the question that we had to grapple with. So, in fact, the students, we surveyed or we assessed the level of attention of our users to determine whether there was a high level of attention to the teaching sessions or learning sessions. And also, there were attempts to promote more interactive communication. And there were all of these attempts, but right now it is on hold. And we did have discussions with the banks. And how and where will metaverse be utilized on that topic, whether shopping or in banking? I mean, mobile services, that is most convenient so far. But in our case, we were discussing with an engine manufacturer. And when you manufacture engines, they have to go through a lot of trial and error for manufacturing. So the components, all the components the prototypes have to be made and assembled to come up with the final product. And if they're able to do that in virtual space, they can reduce costs dramatically. And also, there are some customers who are who complain a lot. So, I mean, if you have to deal with them in physical world, that can be very stressful. But then, if you can deal with them in virtual space, I mean, that would be provide much better experience. So those are some possibilities, but in terms of just attending lectures or engaging in discussions in classes, I don't think there's really a major efficiency gain for Metaverse compared to other technologies. So we're not saying that everything has to be on Metaverse. I mean, there are some areas that Metaverse is indeed necessary.
Okay, so let's go on to the next question.
The avatar or the alternate ego or character in virtual space, the learnings that you have in the virtual world, can that be reflected in the real world? So when you create an avatar, if you look at the experience with regards the kinds of avatar that is made, there's a lot of misunderstanding. Many people think that we create something that's very different from myself as an avatar in Metaverse, but we conducted a survey, and most of the time we found that the basic characteristics of the person is reflected. Of course, the height, the weight, they're all different, but then anyone who knows me would see my avatar and know that it's me, even if I'm 3 feet tall, 3 meter tall in Metaverse. And in fact, the children go to aquariums, and the young kindergarten students go to a VR aquarium. And then you ask them, have you ever been to an aquarium with your family in reality? And they say, yes, I've been to aquarium. So they're not lying. They're not being foolish, but their memory has changed. So, what's unique about human memory is that they remember just the end result, and not the source. So, if you hear negative news about a political party or celebrity, news that you see from Kakao Talk, a few days later, you will remember the source to have come from you and not from your friends or news reports. So on the other hand, there are also these cases on the avatar in the online space when there's exposure to crime. So on this avatar, if I have a lot of affection for this avatar, and if this avatar is, for example, sexually harassed, then you would feel that that has been done to me in reality. So whether it's the positive aspects or negative aspects, that is being projected onto the real self. And of course, there are some people who say that they that's not the case for them. And in those cases, I would say you don't have enough affection and interest in your own avatar. That's why you have that low level of connection. We have many more questions that we have received.
Let's go on to the next question.
대학생들은
The students would be familiar, but in the offices, there are not that many young people, so it's difficult to train them. So, what are some applications for those in their 40s and 50s, particularly in those in management positions? So, VR, I think, with regards to the VR experience. So, do you have any examples of applying VR experience to the older generations? So, or what would be a good approach or methodology for teaching or letting the older generation learn about VR? So, Mr. Yucharo, do you want to go first? In fact, that's a major challenge for us as well. Going back to the example of banking. So there's nothing you can do with regards to banking that you can do on Metaverse. Mobile services is much more convenient for banks. And so people in their 40s, 50s, they really don't need the Metaverse space to do banking. Because so Metaverse isn't necessarily replacing something, but it's simply coexisting. For those of you who need Metaverse space, you can do that. But if not, if you prefer offline, it's still okay. So we do have the question of whether there's really a need to encourage the 40s and 50s to experience Metaverse. So why is it that we are still in the business of Metaverse? It's because they're the younger future consumers and customers. So for our Galaxy City users, for example, most of them are the younger generation, and they would do voice chatting. Oftentimes they would begin with cursing words, and then after they would go out because they have to go to school, and then after school hours they would come in to the metaverse once again. So that's the lifestyle of the younger generation, and for them metaverse is necessary. But then for the older other generations, it's not a must. That's not an answer that I was expecting, but anyhow, yes, that is a major challenge for other companies as well. So Mr. Choi.
네, 저도
Mr. Chun, please go ahead. I'm in my 40s, and when it comes to Metaverse, I had an opportunity to learn more deeply about Metaverse because of my experience with my nephew. Now, I decided to create a game, a Roblox game with my nephew. I'm not a developer, but my nephew worked with me, and he decided to make a jump game. And so you have to escape during math class. And so you do the math as you're jumping and doing the arithmetics. And that led me to take interest in Metaverse. So if you have children, and I think that try out Zepeto, Roblox, for example, these different platforms, and you will be able to learn more. I have a nephew, and he's living outside of Seoul, but I had a chance to work with him. I had a chance to communicate with him and play games with him. So I feel I'm younger when I'm with them. And so I recommend experiencing Metaverse with your children. So that was a message of hope for the 40 somethings and the 50 somethings. I'm in my late 40s, and next year, the first digit of my age will change. I feel a bit pressured because of my age. But anyhow, I showed some people, my acquaintances, how to create an avatar through Zepeto. And a month later, I met that person, and that person thanked me. And I said, I didn't do anything for you. Why are you thankful? And that person said that after he created an avatar through Zepeto, what he did was, at that time, it was really popular to go to the Han River Park, go to the convenience store, and this person actually enjoyed walks to the Han River. But after he created the avatar through Zepeto, someone approached him. And so once you start to talk with another person in Korea, it's very usual to ask your age. And the person who began a conversation with him was in his 20 somethings. And he said that he was able to make friends with that 20 something. And he thanked me. And this is all something that happened in that metaverse space. He said that I would never have had the chance to make friends with a 20 something, but it was possible because of metaverse. I was walking and roaming around the Han River Park, and I was able to make friends with a 20 something. So there are people who are afraid that they will be excluded from society. But now I think that metaverse is a choice, it's not a must. Nevertheless, I think that you might want to choose to try out metaverse. So there are many, many popular different platforms of metaverse out there. So don't fear it. I think that you should have some expectations. Try it out for yourself. There are so many different questions. We have 16 of them on screen. We've covered 10. We have 6 that we have not yet covered. We do have more questions left, but because of time constraint, we would like to conclude this session. Thank you very much. We talked about reality learned through virtuality, metaverse. I do hope that you can find happiness in reality and in metaverse. Yes, thank you very much. So at first, metaverse seemed to be very vague, but we can see through the presentations that metaverse is really deep inside our lives already. So we talked about the new world metaverse. I would like to thank the 4 gentlemen on stage. Thank you very much. We will take a short break and reconvene at 4 o'clock. Thank you very much.